Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Today's show, we're going to be just a little bit of a fireside chat, if you will. We want to just kind of go over and talk about some things that are current events that are going on in the industry and things of that nature. So if you would do us a huge favor, please like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you find anything that we're talking about today helpful, useful in any format, by all means, please share the show with someone that may be able to use this information. And I think with that being said, I think we got all of the bullet points out of the way there, Chuck. So
Yeah, I think so.
Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
We're doing good. We're pre-taping this show, ladies and gentlemen, because Rico and I both have some commitments for Tuesday night. So we're actually pre-taping this on Monday morning, which is wonderful. Unfortunately, you won't be able to pop questions or comments. But Rico and I decided when we were talking over the weekend, let's just do it as a fireside chat without a fire because it's still August, although it's getting a little chilly up here in Canada. Always seems like when the kids are almost ready to get back to school and our kids go back to school right after Labor Day, somehow the weatherman knows and we get chillier nights and the days aren't as hot. It's good to be back in the saddle with you, Rico. You and me alone this time. We always love having our guests, but this is kind of fun too.
absolutely. And I seen that. I don't know where you kind of already put it out there. You went and was looking at a truck this past weekend. Good looking truck too. I like that truck. You want to maybe talk about that for a second before we get into
Yeah. So I saw this 1983 Mack cruise liner. Now, those in our audience that don't know me, I'm a Mack guy. Don't ask me. My first truck was a Mack, and have a lot of respect for the breed and the brand. And I'm just trying. Other than my Ford, would this would be my fourth Mac that we're going to have for our collection, and we have a Ford too, so that's five trucks. And this was a Mac cruise liner, and the guy that owned it, he ran the oldest and largest fleet of cabovers in the world or in North America.
Uh-oh. Chuck. Well, might be having a little technical difficulty.
No, I'm dropped off. Oh, there, I'm back.
There you go. You back in there.
Okay. So I don't know whether that.
So the last part that we heard was that you was telling us about the guy that had the largest fleet.
Yeah. So this guy Brian he had about I think 40 of these cab over Max, and he sold them all when he just in 2019 he decided to size down, and this was his last cab over. And my gosh, this thing is done to the nines. It's just a beautiful looking truck. Took it for a test drive and handled beautifully. So looks like we're buying that one to add to the family fleet. And then I got to tell you a funny story. My wife and I we were lucky enough to go visit a relative out of Chicago, in the north part of Chicago, on Saturday after we saw the truck. And we met up with her, had a wonderful visit. I had never met her before. And then we went to Chicago and we toured Chicago a little bit, walked around and did a little bit of shopping, went out for dinner, left yesterday afternoon, got to the airport. We were flying back to Toronto. And just as we were ready to board, we got a memo on our phones. Flight has been canceled. We both had to be here today. I've got a guest coming and I have things to do. My wife had 3 meetings. So I said, let me see if there's any other flights, before we do anything. And there was nothing because Toronto was, I guess, socked in from rain and weather yesterday. And I said, I got an idea. We're going to rent a car. And I did. And by the time we got out of the Chicago airport, because the traffic was so bad in the airport, it was 6:30 Toronto time, and we were home just west of Toronto at about 2:30 this morning Toronto time. So just about 8 hours. We did pretty good. And a great drive home.
That's a good deal. Glad you guys made it back in safely and without too much incidents. But I tell you here lately, man, with these airlines, that's been a major brouhaha, so to speak. They've been under a lot of stress and a lot of scrutiny as of late with all of the delays and everything that's going on. But we're glad that you didn't end up having to get caught up in that nightmare of having to reschedule or get a hotel room and all that other stuff to try to get back
Oh,
home.
yeah. Well, it would have been impossible because there was a Democratic convention going on in Chicago. So, and I know from experience that you're not getting a hotel room within anywhere about 50 miles around Chicago. So we would have had to go either probably all the way up to Wisconsin to get a room.
Yeah, that's a good thing you got out of there before that stuff started.
Well, many, many years ago, my wife and I had hotel reservations in New York City. And we didn't realize we're dumb Canadians and we were young at the time. We went to check into a big hotel downtown. And the guy at the front desk said, "I'm sorry, but this is the weekend of the Democratic convention and people are keeping their rooms. Good luck. Or here's cab fare to a motor inn in Queens." And I said, "We don't want to stay in Queens. We came to New York City to come to New York, to Manhattan, not Queens. I know what Queens is all about, and I ain't going there." And start to raise my voice. He said, "Buddy, this is a New Yorker." He said, "You can raise your voice all you want. It's not going to do you any good. I don't have any rooms." And we ended up finally taking an airplane out of New York to Boston and had a great weekend.
Man, so you guys went and you had reservations and everything, and because the people weren't giving up the rooms, they overbooked.
That's right. And that was probably 40 years ago.
Man.
Yeah. So to our listeners out there, even if you have a reservation, sometimes you don't get it. Just be warned.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But I tell you, it's we're still in a market where things are really, really soft. I'm hearing things from the financial markets that a lot of refrigerated carriers are cautiously optimistic about the upcoming year. I'm not 100% sure. I guess cautiously optimistic is probably the best word that you can probably use. But for those of us that are on the ground floor, boots on the ground right now, it's still a kind of a little murky outlook as far as things are concerned. Hopefully, we turn the corner next year. But what are you hearing, Chuck?
Well, I'm hearing the same thing. And the only reason I think that the refrigerator carriers have every reason to be cautiously optimistic is because bottom line is people have to eat. And I know a family up here in Canada that's been in the trucking industry since the late 40s. And I'll even give out their name, the Zavitz family. They run several trucking entities. They're incredible operators. And I remember one of them saying many years ago, "I stick with refrigerated because people will always have to eat." And that has been their business model, I think, since day one. And I think it's a good thing. The difference is that, when things are really going well, people eat steak. And when they're not going as well, they eat hamburger or they eat pasta. And now pasta doesn't really need to be refrigerated, but maybe the hamburger they put with it to spread the pasta around a little bit or give it flavor does need refrigeration. Your fruits and vegetables certainly do. And there are markets out there. So I think out of everything right now, I think that probably the refrigeration side of things is probably holding its best. Flatbed, I would imagine. And I wish our friend Dean Croak was here. He would certainly give us some real proof on this one for this week. I'm actually going to have the privilege of seeing Dean later on today. But I honestly think that reefer is probably the safest, the safest of anything. And I think depending on the outcome of the election, whether money is going to be spent um, on infrastructure in the by the new administration, that would have if a lot of money is being spent. Well, then of course we're going to have a lot of open deck work for fixing highways and bridges. Lord knows that some of them need it. Um, but I think that the refrigeration sector, they have there's a pretty big barrier to entry because you've got number one, you've got the cost of the refrigeration, the reefer unit. Number two, you've got the liability. You've got to know what you're doing with reefer freight. You can't just switch from being a flatbed or a dry van carrier into reefer because there's a lot, and somebody's got to know what the heck they're doing. And when I was running traffics years ago, I took I actually took a hand at it a couple times, not knowing what I was doing really, and I got burned. And we didn't enter into the reefer market until my son Doc went out and he bought a small reefer carrier. And with that acquisition came the experience and knowledge of how to run reefers, how to do everything. And it's a different world out there. So if I can caution any of our listeners out there, if you're in another sector and you want to get into reefer, yeah, go ahead, get into it, but don't just think you're going to go out and buy a reefer, $80 or $100,000 reefer, or even a cheap $20,000 reefer, and be competing against the known reefer carriers, because there's a lot of information. If you don't know what you're doing, you will be out of business immediately. You freeze a load of berries, um, or you don't check a load of produce. Things like that. Things that we learned when you're loading produce. You've got to pulp it. Things like that.
Right.
Um, and then there's the equipment itself. Even the new reefers break down, but the old ones especially. If you think you're going to, somebody offers you a deal on a reefer for $20,000 or $25,000, and you think you're going to go to the market with that. Well, first of all, some of the good shippers will never touch you with a 10-foot pole because your equipment's probably too old. So that's the other thing you got to watch out for. So there's a
Yeah.
lot. And Rico, you know more about the reefer business than I'll ever know. There's a lot of things people have to learn about it.
Well, and one of the things that I'm looking here, one of the biggest things that we're facing right now is a lot of us, if you don't have contract rates locked in, is dealing with the rising cost of trucking. From the standpoint of the rising cost for insurance, insurance is steadily going up. The rising cost of maintenance, just regular maintenance. I got a little alarm going off. Let me shut that off. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want the alarm making it to the program. But but those things are. But the constant rising costs, especially of maintenance, and that's one of the biggest things that we're having to fight against right now in the industry is trying our best to keep our costs in check, uh, because rates are definitely still very very soft across the board, whether we're talking about reefer, flatbed, or the dry vans. The rates are just really soft right now, and it's very hard to demand a premium or get a premium out there in the current market. And so it's definitely, as we had Dean on the last time, we've still got way too much capacity in the market, and we've got to flush some of this stuff out. So trying to do as much as you can that you can try to help keep your costs down and keep everything within check is definitely the way to go. Because right now it's not really about, as the old saying goes, it's not about how much you can make; it's about how much you can keep. And right now with the rising cost of everything, like I said, from the cost of maintenance, the cost of tires, the cost of insurance, all of those fronts are those things are steadily starting to increase, but we can't get, we seem to be really still stagnated when it comes to the being able to get the rates that we want to see. And just to follow that up, I pulled up. We was talking about Dean. I pulled up his report, and was showing that national average spot market rate for dry vans is sitting at $1.56 per mile. And you couple that with a 52 cents per mile fuel surcharge, so it's putting you right around the $2 per mile mark, and that's, everybody knows that's, $2 was numbers that we were shooting for maybe 10 years ago to try to operate at a profit. So if you
20 years
operate,
ago, Rico. For us, okay, you got to remember a small fleet
hmm
has, at the time we were probably running 25 trucks or something. And at $2 a mile, we weren't even covering our nut. We really weren't, because we did have some, we did figure, we put maintenance in there, and we put safety, all our real costs.
right,
Okay. It wasn't just the cost of insurance and the cost of fuel and the cost of drivers. It was the cost of wear and tear. And these were the true costs. And we were well over $2 a mile
right. And
back
like I
then.
say, these are not pie in the sky numbers.
That's
These
right.
are actual numbers that mean something, especially when it comes to staying in business. Um, and just to jump across on the other segments, just to kind of give a report on that, was showing, Dean shows the flatbed rate. So the spot market rate is at $1.87 per mile with a 63 cents per mile fuel surcharge, which that puts you in a little bit better operating shape, but not the greatest.
Yeah.
Um,
First of all, what you have to remember with flatbed, quite often you have to pay more for your labor. It, and I always say, if you've got to if you've got to put tarps on a load, freight is stupid. Okay. Freight doesn't know where it's going. If you're in Atlanta, it doesn't know whether you're going to a suburb of Atlanta or California. It takes the same amount of time to tarp that load if it's got to be tarped on a flatbed. Your
right.
freight doesn't know it. So you better be paid accordingly.
And moving over, we were just talking about reefers. The reefer rate is showing on the actual spot market right now is showing an average of $1.95 per mile with a 57 cents fuel surcharge on top of the 195 per mile. And like I said, that's not the greatest, but because when you did it with reefers, of course, you got not only two engines to keep buy fuel for, because you got to buy fuel for the reefer as well. So
Yeah. And you know what? The other thing is, yes, right now, look at the calendar, girls and boys. It's harvest season. Okay. We are busy because stuff's coming off the fields. It's got to get to the market. This too shall end, unfortunately. So, if any of our listeners are going, whoa, look at that, wow, I can make some money here. I'm going to go buy a reefer. Yeah, by the time you buy a reefer and start hauling produce, season will be over.
yeah, yeah. And it's just so right now it's just all about trying to making sure that, as to kind of echo our good friend Kevin Rutherford and everybody else too, to slow down. Make sure you're slowing down to try to keep that your fuel, what I'm saying, your fuel and cost in check, so that you can make sure that you're getting the best possible fuel mileage that you can possibly get. Because the thing about it is, once you start mashing on that pedal, and the faster you go, you think you may be able to get a load off quicker, but actually they've done a lot of extensive studies on that type of stuff. And if you just go ahead and set your cruise control at a nice, reasonable 63, 60,
Yeah.
some people can't stand it, but I try to cruise around at about 63 miles per hour, and that kind of puts you there at the same time, pretty much at the same time, especially as much construction and everything else that's going on across the country. There's the guy that's riding down the road doing 70, 75, burning up all his profit through the smokestack.
That's
So,
exactly what he's doing, and he's being a lot harder on his equipment, and he's making a lot less money than the driver that's out there driving 60 or 62 miles an hour.
Chuck, I don't know. I know you had a fleet and everything, but just out of curiosity, do you remember how much you used to your cost for an oil change back when you were really on top of watching the
Well, you
numbers
could
around?
buy, yeah, they started at about $100 at you could get um, for just under $100 at the side of the interstate. Now you had to be careful when you went to those, those places at the side of the highway, even though they were part of a big truck stop, because we had a incident once where they didn't put the drain cap off properly and they cooked an engine. I don't like having oil changes done at the side of highways. Okay, it's not the place. I want it done by a mechanic, or you do it yourself, so you do things right and you take a look while your truck is under there.
Well, I was
That,
asking that question just to see if you can take a shot. See, do you know how much the average at any of those shops now? Do you know what the average cost of an oil change is running nowadays?
well, you got a lot more filters now, and I'm
Yeah,
going to guess it's probably closer to 400. Am I correct?
you're getting there. The average oil change is running about $450 to $500 nowadays.
Excuse me. That does not surprise me. You've got all these other things, and labor and oil, everything has gone up, and of course they are pushing us to use, some of these new synthetic oils, which extends the length of your oil change, which is fine. And I know that some of the big guys have had really incredible luck with that. And if you're using it, God bless you. The only thing I have to warn you about is, are you still getting under your truck and checking all the time? Because that was the wonderful thing when when we were changing oil frequently, was the mechanic was getting under there, and every time he got under there, he'd find a little thing before it
Yeah,
became
you
a
can't
big
you
thing.
you can catch a heck of a lot more that's going on versus
Yeah,
versus just yeah, yeah,
yeah, you
definitely.
have to get under. Even when you think things are good, you're going to find you're missing. There's a lot of stuff to go wrong. You're going to be missing a nut and bolt from somewhere, or something's loose, or something's starting to chafe. You've got to be really strict on it. So, because of that, I just think it's a good policy to, if you are extending your oil changes, make sure you still get under there all the time.
So now I got switching gears just a little bit, Chuck, and I want to this is a kind of a conundrum, and I want to throw this out at you because we talked about too much capacity in the market, too many carriers out here, so people need to go out of business. But there's still, if you listen to a lot of the bigger organizations, they still say we have a driver shortage. And I think that we may have a situation where we don't have maybe newer drivers coming into the industry. I don't. I'm reluctant. I'm still reluctant to say there's a driver shortage just because of the simple fact that we can't necessarily push the rates to where we need them to be. If always we say it's supply and demand, but if the rates, that's kind of the biggest indicator for me. But from your standpoint, I know you're involved with next gen trucking and a lot of people. What are you hearing? What are you hearing from that aspect as far as the number of drivers that we need for the industry? Where do you fall on that whole thing?
We do need to bring in young blood. Now, there's a number that, and don't quote me on this, we're about at least 60,000 short. Um, Now, I don't think we need to bring people in to the industry, train them properly. That's really important. Train them properly and retain them. There is no sense. This is the most asinine thing that I've ever heard of in my entire life. Is we bring people in, we work so hard to bring them in, and we lose them. And we lose them because we mistreat them.
Right.
I was talking to one of our listeners, and he was telling me that he parks in a parking lot that's owned by a one of the large mega carriers. And he was telling me a couple of weeks ago there was barely room for his truck because there were so many of that mega carriers trucks parked in that parking lot. Drivers idling their trucks all night because it was hot out and because there was no freight. Well, how are those drivers getting paid? And how long are those new drivers? Now, the ones with experience, they will stay in the industry. But when you take somebody and you've taken them out of another industry and you've brought them in and you've trained them and they've gone through their 2 or 6 or 8 week training course, you brought them in and you've given them a tractor trailer to drive by themselves, and you put them, they're from New Jersey, and you've got them out in Casper, Wyoming for 3 days, not earning any money. Do you really think they're going to stay in the industry?
Right.
And it's that sort of thing. Why do we bother? This is ridiculous. What we have to do, really, if we're going to retain people, and we do have to retain them because, we're still losing a lot of seasoned drivers. They're aging out. There's guys my age who, for their own reason or for medical reasons, or just for the craziness that's on the road, and it's mostly behavior by four-wheelers. Like I just drove back from Chicago last night, and I just can't believe some of the behavior I see from four-wheelers. Most of the truck drivers, I'd have to say, 99% of them are pretty damn good. They do a great job up there, out there. But you can see why people are so disenchanted with the industry. We pay by the mile. So when you don't
Do you think that's going to change, Chuck?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Do you think that's going to change as far as continuing to pay by the mile? Because
it has to. Okay, I hate to say it. I think this is what I really believe. The only way that we are going to be able to get good people, okay, and I'm talking about people like you, okay, that are dependable, people that know how to drive, people that are passionate about it, is we got to treat them right. And we can't expect those people to work for free. Who works for free other than owner operators and truck drivers? And we've got to treat it as skilled labor. So we have to look at it the same way we look at a plumber or an electrician. A plumber comes in and he's going to, he's going to change your sink in your kitchen, and he's going to put a new one in, and he tells you, well, Rico, it's going to be $500 labor. And then all of a sudden he starts pulling the old one out, and he goes, Rico, we got a problem. Oh my God, you didn't tell me this. And you go, what? I got to bring in 4 guys to stop the water here. We got big problems in this house. Well, you're not getting that for $500. Now you've added a whole bunch of other work to the project. It's no different than you take your truck in and you tell the guy that, to service it, and he phones you. He said, Rico, your turbocharger's just about gone. Well, he's not giving you a turbocharger for the cost of an oil change.
Right.
So I think the only way eventually how this is going to have to work, because of the congestion alone that truck drivers are facing, we are going to have to start some sort of a pricing. It is, let's just say it's $1,500 from Atlanta to Delaware. That's the rate based on so many hours. If it's more than that, you're going to have to pay extra. And I think we have to put it on the customer. And once we do that, I think we might see things done a lot differently. And we may see a change in traffic patterns when all of a sudden corporate America and corporate Canada have to start paying for some of these delays.
Yeah, it still boggles my mind. I thought that I was under the impression of once we got electronic logging devices became the standard in almost all the trucks. I know every truck doesn't have them, but pretty much across the board, I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably 95% of the industry is on electronic logging devices.
Yeah.
I didn't think that we would have the issue of the tension as much as we still do, because because you have a device that is there that is that it's very difficult. I don't know of any way. I'm pretty sure maybe somebody out there that's smarter than me knows a way to fudge your location and timing and stuff like that. But I don't know of any way, because it's GPS tracked and everything else, how you can tell where the vehicle was, how long it was there. It didn't move. I didn't, but I'm still hearing a lot of carriers still having problems being able to even negotiate the tension when it comes to, and I guess that's kind of a thing of the spot market, so to speak. I'm not sure that people that are on
Yeah.
contracts are going to have that same issue, because, of course, when you're dealing on the spot market, everything you pretty much negotiate an all-in rate, and it becomes difficult after that all-in rate is negotiated to go back and try to negotiate something extra on top of that.
Yeah. That's, you know what? Unfortunately, in the spot market, and that's why you and I fought so vehemently against people playing the spot market when things were good. Um, when you're playing that spot market, especially when things are the way they are now, you're at the mercy of everybody.
Right.
And I could never understand. Like, I remember at one point we had a terminal that overlooked a shipper that shipped apple pies to the U.S. And I would watch this one carrier's trucks go in there to take loads, cheap loads to California. I mean, these loads were, now granted, it was 15, 20 years ago. They were paying $1 a mile to get to California. Okay, for a reefer. That's what, I spoke to them. That's what they were paying. $1 a mile Canadian. Okay. Which,
Wow.
okay, so they were cheap. And I would watch those trucks in there for 8 and 10 hours to load a load. Somebody was paying for that 8 to 10 hours. And getting back to what you originally said about the e-logs, there was a politician. Unfortunately, he's retired now. He was from Oregon, named Peter DeFazio. I'll never forget this. I don't even know what party he was with. Our friend Hank knew him quite well from his days in Washington. And Peter DeFazio came out before e-logs and said, guys, before we put these e-logs into effect, let's do something about the waiting time at shippers and receivers. We've
Right.
got, and of course, U.S. government. No offense to both our countries, but you would think they would take here's some sage wisdom, but nobody did anything because the government really doesn't want at times to get involved in business. They can't even run the government, never mind police business. But we have a real issue now in the fact that your average driver is missing, and I'm talking your long haul driver is missing out on about 4 hours every day of driving time.
Yeah.
Okay, that 4 hours is well over 200 miles that he or she is not making because they are sitting in traffic, or there's at a shipper, or they're at a receiver. I saw a traffic jam yesterday. I was heading out of Chicago. There was a traffic jam almost from the Indiana line.
And what time of day was this?
This was about 5. No, it was about 6 o'clock Chicago time by that point. It was like I could not believe the traffic jam. It was insane. And up here, I have to say, for the most part, your governments, and this is like all over the United States, are pretty fast at cleaning up wrecks. I remember hearing about a horrible wreck or a number of wrecks in the Dallas-Fort Worth area once, about 3-4 years ago, where they got this flash freeze. If you remember, it was around just before Christmas time, if I'm not mistaken. And there were hundreds of accidents, several of them fatal. It was early in the morning, big trucks upside down, smashing into each other, total wreck-em derby.
Right.
People killed. It was horrible. They had it cleaned up immediately. I mean, like these Texans that didn't mess around. Just get out there, get the wreckers out, get the dump trucks out, get the front end loaders up, open the highway, get commerce going. I think everybody better take a page out of Texas's book, because I think you guys overall in the states do a great job. I know that we had that bridge blow up last year in Philadelphia area. There was an explosion, and the governor, I think his name is Shapiro, he had it done in record time. Look at that one recently in Delaware, that bridge. Had that been Canada, they'd be struggling with it for years. That bridge would be closed. You guys are better that way, okay? You had it done in record time. You really did. You're good that way, but you still got to get better, because these delays are so costly. And it's funny. It gets me into my next. Sorry to get on a soapbox here, Rico, but there's this whole new thing coming out with the 2027 emission standards. Now, this sounds like the same crap that we were fed back in 2008, which put the Caterpillar people out of manufacturing engines for highway trucks.
Right.
And I have a fear that we are in 2027, we are going to relive the nightmare of 2008, which most of those 2008 trucks, when we got them, they were junk. We didn't know anything about them. They were some of the worst diesel engines we ever had. Now, I understand out of that developed a diesel engine that all those new engines now, the air that comes out of the exhaust that comes out of the stack is cleaner than the air that goes into it. Okay, that's my understanding. And I know that when we had our shop at Traffics, when I was there, anytime the mechanics were working on an old truck, there would be complaints from everybody in the office, except me, of course. Those fumes are killing me. Shut that truck down. The new trucks could run all day. Nobody knew about it.
Huh.
And it was the new trucks running all day because they were always broken. And so I'm just wondering, we're gonna put the trucking industry through hell on earth all over again to meet some emission standards. But why don't we fix the real problem when you have hundreds of thousands of vehicles idling all over the place? Doesn't that do more damage to the ozone layer than the current trucks? Like, why do we have to have a new emission standard? Why don't we just fix what's broken right in front of us that we could fix?
Yeah.
Without putting the trucking industry. The trucking industry is, ladies and gentlemen, it is a necessity. We don't eat without trucks. None of us. Okay.
Well, I mean, like you say, trucking brings everything, whether it be the food that you eat, to the chair that you're sitting down in while you're doing your work,
Yeah.
to the clothes that you got on your back. I mean, it's an absolute integral part of the economy and of our lifestyle, whether we like it or know it or not. Everything that you got, everything that you touch and use, got there via some form of a truck.
100%. And I don't think we get the recognition we need. Now, granted, yeah, there's always room for improvement, but why are we having to make this new improvement in 2027? Shouldn't other parts of the world, because it's all one world, okay? Whatever we put up into the atmosphere in Asia or Africa or anywhere else is going to affect us. Why do we have to be the leaders in this? Why don't we all just get on the same page where we are right now? Instead of putting the trucking industry through more hell on earth.
I totally
Guys,
agree.
we're getting worn thin here. Listen to us.
I totally agree. And one other thing, I'm not sure where they stand with that whole truckers bill of rights and stuff like that, but that's something else that we definitely need to, because it's still a sad state of affairs when you going in, you've driven and you've tried to get to a place to make a delivery on time and everything, and you get there and they don't even have you can't even use the restroom at the facility. Um,
Yeah.
that's still a major problem that we are having at some of these places, and I understand sometimes we as truckers we got to do a better job of our imaging as well. We can't, we got to make sure that we are presenting ourselves as professional, meaning we coming in showered, we're coming in looking the part, not looking
100%.
like not looking like a bum coming off the streets with your pants hanging off your backside and you haven't showered in 3, 4, 5 days. Because people are like, well, I don't want. They're afraid if you go in the bathroom or use the bathroom that you're going to leave it in a total wreck or a mess, whether that's a stereotype or not. But we have to do better at policing ourselves and producing a better image of ourselves to the public so that we can kind of fight against some of the stigma that we're faced against. Not, but we have to do better at policing ourselves and producing a better image of ourselves to the public so that we can kind of fight against some of the stigma that we're faced against, and all of
Yeah.
that, whether you like it or not. um, all of that is due to the image that you carry, and we have to work on presenting a better version, a better image than what we currently are putting out there to the public.
100. You. Well, I'll tell you, Rico. Truer words have never been spoken. Sometimes we deserve what we get because of behavior of a few, which is unfortunate. Leaving pee bottles all over the
Right.
place. Not signaling, all these things. And then the other thing, and I'll harp on this one again, by people leaving, like truck drivers themselves, leaving really bad stuff on social media about other drivers. Yes, there are people out there from big companies that can't back a truck up. I'll be honest with you. When I first got into this, I couldn't back a truck up to save my life. And I'm sure there's lots of boys and girls out there that have been doing it for years that will be honest and say, the first few times I did it, it was a nightmare. It took a while till I got it. Okay. We didn't have video cameras back then. What we did back then, when you saw somebody was having a hard time, you said, can I help you? Or the person that was having a hard time said to a seasoned driver, can you help me? Okay. We didn't watch somebody. We didn't video somebody at the worst moment of their life when they had flopped a truck over upside down and all their stuff was all over the road. We didn't stand there with a video camera and take pictures of of their clothes all over the highway and a truck upside down. No, we went to render aid. And
Right.
as long as we are going to act like that, we're going to get what we have. And maybe what we need to do is get those characters that are doing this stuff out of the industry because they're part of the cause of it.
Yeah, we definitely and another thing is, um like I said, when I talk about working on our image, and I understand everybody's entitled to a bad day, but we have to, when we going into these shippers and these consignees, we got to make sure that we have our attitudes in line, because another thing that gives us a bad taste in our mouth when we go to these places is a lot of times, and I know we truck drivers are a special breed. Listen, I understand, but we still have to, like I say, the professionalism has to be first, and we have to be able to go in and talk reasonable to people, and understand that they may be having a stressful day as well. We know that we have stressful days. Sometimes we have to allow a little bit of grace, and I understand sometimes some shippers and stuff can be a little snappy and everything,
Oh, yeah.
but being courteous, trying to have a smile on your face, and at the very least, just being respectful. and not not being so belligerent. I've seen a lot of times uh, drivers ahead of me going in and just being belligerent for no apparent reason at all. And then we wonder this, why did we get treated the way we do? Because you imagine at some of these shippers, if they have to deal with 4 or 5 drivers with the attitude, with that type of attitude, even though you may have the majority of drivers may be coming in and trying to be professional and courteous, but if you got 3 or 4 guys every single day that come in and being belligerent like that, of course that's going to cause people to kind of build up a certain amount of prejudice against you when they see you coming. So
A
the best
hundred
thing
percent.
the best
Well,
thing that I can suggest is try your best to kind of, if you got to take a second before you walk in that ship or do a woo-saw, but get your mind right, get yourself together before you go in there, and go in there with the definite attitude of, I'm going to win these people over regardless of what's going on. And if you just be a little courteous and have a smile and try to be conduct yourself in that manner, that goes a heck of a long ways versus being very combative as at a lot of times. You going in and they may be behind, they don't have a dock at the moment or whatever. What's going on? And snapping
yeah.
it. That's definitely not gonna get you loaded or unloaded any quicker or get you a dock door any quicker.
The
So
other Rico, and I hate to say this because my grandfathers all came from somewhere else, but we have a lot of newcomers from all over uh, throughout North America. In here in Canada, we are big on hiring people from the South Asian community. A lot of them are farmers um, from back home, and I know that in the United States you have people from all over. You
right,
certainly have people from Central and South America and Mexico, and you have as well as South Asian and African communities, which is fine because we need truck drivers. Okay, but if we can teach these newcomers, because we can't just look at them as aliens. They are part of our. They're going to be part. They are part of our family, and we have to teach them. They don't know, okay? And if we can teach them that, you know what? Yeah, you want to wear your sandals in the truck, that's fine. But for God's sake, don't go out dress like that. Dress. We need to teach them, talk to them. They're nice people. They look different than you and me, maybe, but they're nice people. I remember a guy coming in on my loading dock one day, and he had the funniest shoes I ever saw in my life. They were from somewhere in India, I think, and they were like a slipper, and they were pointed, like they were curled up. They were
right,
really interesting. And I said, listen, you can stand here if you want, but I need to tell you something. If you don't have steel-toed boots and something happens here, there's no workman's compensation for you. And he was an outside driver. I said, you can stand here, but don't go near the trailer. But if you have steel-toed boots and somebody runs over your foot, you'll be covered. You're good. But as long as you do that, you're going to have to cover whatever your living expenses are until you're better, including your hospital stay, because they won't cover it. You're told to wear, personal safety attire, and you're
right,
not wearing personal protection. He made a
right.
beeline out of that terminal in about 30 seconds,
Yeah.
and he
And I mean,
thanked
certain
me.
things are just certain things that are standard. If once you're part of the industry and you understand the different places that you go, certain things are just kind of part of the uniform. We'll say, a lot of times, like you say, you need to have a pair of boots. You need to have, maybe a hard hat is a good thing to
Yes,
keep with you. And a lot of times now you'd have to have the high visibility vest and stuff like that. So
you shouldn't leave home without one.
those are
Um,
some of the things that just automatically you need to kind of make sure that you go on Amazon if you don't have it, and order it and put it in your truck and just keep it in your truck at all times for you to have. And with that being said, Chuck, I'm looking at the time, man. We don't blew through the hour.
Yeah, I know it doesn't take long, but yeah, I guess we really do need to. These are the new people in our industry, so let's, guys, girls, let's give them a hand. Let's try to educate them rather than just make fun of them, because you're going to need them to bring your food and your tires and your oil and your filter. Okay, so and let's teach them when they don't know something and you see them messing up. Let's just tell them. They'll learn. It's how we learn.
Absolutely.
People
Try
are
to try
people.
to try to be the example that you want to see.
You got it.
And with that being said, Chuck, like I said, we don't went through the hour. Let everybody know we get a little busy and everything, but let good people know how they may be able to find you and keep up with all of the new acquisitions that you coming up with.
I'm having a lot of fun with this. I got to tell you, I loved working. The almost 50 years I spent in the trucking industry, I enjoyed almost every minute of it. But this is even more fun. So this is the fun part. So do your hard work now, boys and girls, and you get to enjoy some of the fruits of your labor if you look after yourselves. If I can help any of our listeners at all, please reach out to me at chucksnow280 at outlook.com. Put your phone number on there. If there's anything I can help you with, I certainly will. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week.
Well, as always, ladies and gentlemen, we're always grateful for you spending a little bit of time with us. Hopefully, we were able to share something with you that you found value in. And if you don't mind, please tell a friend to tell a friend about the show. And as we always say, you could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took some time to hang out with us. We're always grateful for you doing so. If you would, ladies and gentlemen, like I said earlier, like, share, and subscribe. You can drop down and leave us a comment on the show. We'll try to go back and read those as well on these previously recorded shows. But with that being said, we want you guys to continue to stay safe out there, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and God willing, we'll talk at you same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.